Welcome to Sleep Theater Radio, where we bring you immersive tales accompanied by soft rain and ambient thunder. Tonight, we return to the lands beneath the world tree, a realm of elves, roots, and fading light. Eolis, once a proud village blessed by the tree eternal, now lies in ruin. Its wells run black, its skies hang heavy with ash, and its people whisper of a blight that devours both flesh and faith. But one man has come home, a wanderer, a warrior, a son of Eolis. They call him the Returner. His path will lead through poisoned wells, burning cathedrals, and haunted roots to confront the evil one who festers in the tree's heart. And perhaps in the ashes of decay, he will find the spark of renewal. This is Faxanadu, the Returner of Eolis. If you enjoy these journeys into dark fantasy and myth, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps the stories grow and keeps the storm alive. Now settle in, listen close, and let the rain carry you to the world of roots, flame, and forgotten gods. Chapter 1, The Crumbling Gates of Eolis. The wind smelled of ash. He hadn't expected that. Not after years wandering under foreign skies, fighting wars not his own, surviving on his sword and wits. The smell of his homeland had always been loamy and green, tinged with the spice of tree sap and the songs of cicadas. But as the traveler crested the ridge overlooking Eolis, it was a cemetery silence that greeted him, and the tang of something foul carried on the breeze. He paused there, atop the ancient road of sun-bleached stones, and stared down into the valley where his village lay, if it still could be called that. Eolis, once a proud elven settlement at the base of the world tree, had become a shadow of itself. Thatched rooftops sagged. The once golden spire of the chapel leaned, cracked at the tip. The river that used to carry silver minnows now lay stagnant, lined with rust-colored sludge. The tree, whose roots stretched across the land like lifelines, pulsed sickly in the distance, its bark gray, its limbs brittle. He gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. The Returner had come home. The gates were still there, though time had not been kind to them. Vines, twisted and gnarled like corpses, had swallowed half the archway. One of the stone sentinels had fallen completely, its torso shattered and head missing. The other remained, its expression chipped into a vague look of warning. The hero stepped through and into the ruins of the town square. Nothing greeted him but silence and the clink of his boots on the dusty cobbles. The once bustling fountain was dry, its basin cracked like parched lips. He passed a shuttered bakery, a broken apothecary sign swinging lazily from rusted chains, and came to a stop in front of the old guild hall. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, it was dim and cool. Dust motes floated through narrow beams of sunlight, illuminating broken tables and torn banners. At the far end sat an old man in ceremonial robes, pale blue, once regal, now faded to the color of drowned sky. His back was bent, and a single candle flickered beside him. "You've returned," the old man rasped. "I feared none would." The Returner said nothing, only nodded. "They call it a blight," the old man continued, voice cracking like dry leaves. "The roots are poisoned. Monsters roam the branches. The wells have turned bitter. The tree is dying, and with it, all of us." The traveler stepped forward. "What happened?" "An evil one, summoned from the dark beyond the roots. He twists the lifeblood of the tree to his own ends. Our prayers go unheard, our warriors lost. And the king? In hiding, some say mad." The Returner stared at the candle, its flame wavering. "What would you have me do?" The elder stood slowly back, his bones clicking in protest. From beneath the altar, he produced a tattered map and an old bronze key. "Go east to the poisoned wells. There you'll find the source of the first corruption. Slay what festers there, and perhaps the tree will begin to heal." He accepted the key without a word. His eyes lingered on the map. Ink faded, many roads crossed out or smudged. "Will you bless me, old friend?" the Returner asked. The priest smiled weakly and raised a shaking hand. "In the name of Elvenkind and the tree eternal, may your sword strike true." As the Returner left the guild hall, the sun pierced the clouds, illuminating the shattered streets like judgment. He walked east into the land of poison. Chapter 2. the poisoned wells. The road east was no road at all. It had once been a cobbled trail winding through gentle woods and quiet farmland, dotted with mossy signposts and songbirds in the branches. Now it was a scar, a path carved by decay and fear. The grass had withered to gray threads, and the trees leaned inward like mourners at a wake. The returner's boots crunched dry bones of leaves underfoot, and every rustle in the underbrush sounded like a breath held too long. He kept his hand on his sword. The old priest's map had shown the wellspring to be only half a day's journey, but the landscape fought him at every step. Brambles twisted like claws, and the soil stank of rot. Twice he passed shattered shrines to forgotten elven spirits. Their faces had been chiseled off, their bowls held nothing but ash. At midday the wind shifted. He smelled iron. The poisoned wells of Eolis had once been a sacred place, clear, deep pools fed by the veins of the world tree itself. Pilgrims used to gather there to heal, to pray, to draw water that shimmered with moonlight. But now, black sludge coated the surface like oil. The air was thick with a tang that burned the nostrils. A lone figure stood at the base of the largest well. She wore a mask of polished bone and carried a staff made of twisted root and iron. Her robes, once green, were blackened by corruption. At her feet, the water churned unnaturally, as if something inside it thrashed and clawed against the surface. The returner approached cautiously. "Leave," the masked woman hissed. Her voice echoed, unnatural, like many mouths speaking at once. "This place is claimed." "By what?" he asked, sword half drawn. "By the seedless root, by the blight, by the one who feeds." The returner stepped forward. "I've returned to heal the tree. There is no healing, only hunger." Without another word, she struck her staff into the ground. The earth split. From the corrupted well surged a creature, amphibian and skeletal, its flesh translucent, its eyes glowing red. It roared and charged. The returner moved on instinct. His blade flashed silver in the gray light, cleaving into the creature's side. Black ichor sprayed. It screamed, its form unraveling like smoke, but not before another appendage lashed out and caught his side. Pain bloomed hot. He stumbled. The masked woman raised her arms. "This is the first of many. You are too late." "No," the returner gasped, just in time. He charged, shield raised, and brought his blade down on her staff. It shattered with a scream, not entirely hers. The air shifted. The ground calmed. The sludge hissed and receded. The creature vanished. The masked woman collapsed, coughing blood. Her mask slipped, revealing a once familiar face, one of the village apprentices from years ago. The blight had twisted her beyond recognition. "Forgive me," she whispered, before going still. By sunset, the wells began to clear. Not entirely, too much had been lost, but enough to glimmer once more with the barest hint of starlight. The returner bound his wound and knelt to drink. It tasted of memory. Chapter 3, The Hermit Riddle. By morning, the forest had grown quieter, but not safer. With the poisoned well behind him and the blight receding from its edge, the returner traveled deeper into the hollow places beneath the tree's boughs. Here, the land sagged, as if the world itself had grown weary. The branches above twisted into unnatural shapes, knotting together to block the sky, and the ground was scattered with bones, some animal, some not. The map marked this area as Felfane Hollow, a place once known for its medicinal herbs and the solitude it offered monks and mystics. Now, nothing grew, and solitude had turned to suffocating silence. That silence broke suddenly with a whispered voice. "Steel makes noise, wanderer, but truth rings louder still." The returner froze. He turned slowly, hand on hilt. A figure stepped out from between the roots of a massive half-rotted tree. It was a man, or had been, once, cloaked in threadbare robes with a beard like dry moss and eyes that glowed faintly green. He carried no weapon, but a dozen talismans jingled from his belt. Bones, glass beads, tiny bells made of insect carapace. "I was told a hermit lived in these woods," the returner said. The man bowed slightly, and one does, or a ghost, or both. "I need answers." You need a riddle, the hermit replied, teeth yellow but smile amused. The evil one coils like rot in the marrow of the tree, but to reach him, one must pass the trials of the roots, and no root bears its secrets to the dull of mind. The returner narrowed his eyes. Then speak your riddle. The hermit chuckled and drew a circle in the dirt with a crooked stick. In a house with no doors and no windows lies a golden treasure. The house can be cracked, but never opened. What is it? The returner blinked. He hadn't heard a riddle in years. His life had been blades and blood, not riddles. He thought. No doors, no windows. But inside treasure. A trap? No. An object. A metaphor. Something small. He stepped forward and answered, an egg. The hermit's grin widened. Well done. The tree approves. A branch above creaked. The moss curled back. A hole opened in the bark of a nearby tree, like a throat yawning. The returner looked at the hermit. Is this your magic? The old man shook his head. Not mine. The trees, it remembers those who remember it. Where does the path lead? The hermit's gaze darkened. To the base of the tower of trunk where no light reaches. But beware, what grows in the dark does not grow gently. The returner stepped toward the opening. It pulsed with unnatural life. And you? He asked. Why help me? The hermit chuckled, vanishing once more into the woods. Because I am tired of speaking riddles to the dead. The returner entered the tree. The light vanished behind him. Chapter 4, The Cathedral of Flame. The passage was alive. As the returner stepped into the hollow behind the hermit, the bark closed behind him with a sound like held breath exhaled. The darkness was absolute at first, broken only by a dim green glow pulsing from the moss-covered walls. The floor sloped downward, down and deeper, as if he were descending into the tree's very soul. Time unraveled in that darkness. He walked for what felt like hours. At some point, the walls stopped pulsing and began to hum. The tree was not dead. It dreamed, and in its dreams were fire and ash. The tunnel finally gave way to a vast chamber lit by smoldering red crystals embedded in the walls like molten eyes. He had arrived at the base of the Cathedral of Flame. A massive root arched over the entrance like a broken rib. Beyond it, a towering stone structure emerged from the core of the tree, wrapped in vines blackened by heat. It should not have been here. Cathedrals were built by hands, not by roots. But this one had formed, shaped by pain and ancient fire. Inside, firelight flickered against walls scorched with forgotten symbols. A giant brazier at the center roared with unnatural flame, and at its base knelt a figure clad in scorched ceremonial armor. The knight's helm glowed from within like a forge, and when he rose, cinders fell from his joints like tears. Another flamekin? The knight boomed. Or a fool seeking light where none is welcome. I seek to purge the corruption, the returner said, stepping forward. The knight's laugh echoed like hammer on anvil. Then you've come to be judged by fire. The ground shook. From the corners of the cathedral, statues cracked open, revealing flaming skeletal beasts with ember eyes. They circled the returner like wolves. He drew his sword and leapt into the fray. Flame bit at his cloak and ash filled his lungs. The skeletal beasts were relentless, coordinated. One lunged for his neck. He ducked, slicing upward. Bone and cinder flew. Another tackled him from the side. He rolled, impaled its spine, and used its body as a shield against the fire breath of the third. When the last beast fell, the knight clapped slowly. Impressive. But fire is not merely destruction. It is rebirth. The knight raised his flaming blade. Let us see what you become in the flame. Their duel was brutal. Steel on flame, precision against power. The returner's blade shattered the knight's pauldron, revealing molten muscle beneath. The knight struck back, his flaming greatsword sending shockwaves with every swing. Finally, the returner dodged, feinted, and drove his blade into the knight's side. The flame flickered. The knight staggered, dropped to one knee. Well struck, he said, voice fading. Then take it, the ember sigil. May it light your path through the dark. As the knight's armor crumbled into ashes, the brazier dimmed. From the cinders, a small ember floated upward, then embedded itself in the returner's chest like a brand. It burned, but he stood tall. The fire no longer threatened. It obeyed. Chapter 5, The Tower of Trunk. The fire within him burned steady. With the ember sigil etched beneath his skin, the returner pressed deeper into the tree. The cathedral collapsed behind him in a plume of ash and silence, and from its ruin rose a stair of living bark, spiraling upward through a hollow that reached impossibly high into the heavens. This was the Tower of Trunk, the great vertical spine of the world tree. Not built by hand, but formed by nature and time, it stretched for miles above the canopy, a place few had seen and fewer survived. It was said that those who climbed it emerged changed, if they emerged at all. Each step groaned underfoot, ancient and weary, roots coiled like serpents along the walls, and every so often the bark peeled back to reveal windows of sap-stained amber. Through them he saw glimmers of the outer world, ruined towns, withering branches, distant mountain ridges. The air grew thin, the world fell away, and the whispers began. They started as echoes, faint thoughts not his own. But the higher he climbed, the louder they grew. You left us. You were meant to protect. You are too late. They were the voices of the fallen, villagers, warriors, even children. Not ghosts, but memories rooted deep in the tree itself, carried like pollen in the wind. He climbed. At a landing wrapped in flowering vines, he met a guardian, not of blade or beast, but will. A pale elven woman stood in the path, clad in ceremonial garb made of bark and woven gold. Her eyes were white, sightless, yet fixed on him. You seek to heal the tree, she said, but healing requires sacrifice. I've given much, not enough. She raised her hand and the vines surged to life. They wrapped around his legs, his arms, his throat, not to crush, but to test. They showed him flashes. His village burning, comrades dying in foreign wars, his own face staring back through smoke and guilt. He gritted his teeth and summoned the ember. With a roar, fire burst from within him, not to destroy, but to purify. The vines hissed and withdrew. The woman nodded, fading into golden petals. Then rise. The tree accepts your pain. At the top of the tower, he reached a chamber open to the sky. The wind howled. The stars shimmered above. A single altar stood at the center, encased in spiraling roots. There, embedded in its bark, was the verdant crest, a token of ancient power once used by the tree's original defenders. He placed his hand upon it. Visions flooded him, of the tree in bloom, of the evil one's arrival, like a black seed burrowing into sacred soil, and of a prophecy spoken long ago. The returner will climb, will fall, and will rise again. With fire in his chest and green in his hand, he will undo the rot. The returner closed his hand around the crest. It pulsed with life. Chapter 6, Mist in the Branches. The wind changed when he left the tower. The sky, once dark with ash, now shimmered with a sickly violet haze. Above him stretched the high boughs, vast wooden limbs wider than city streets, arcing like bridges across the endless canopy. A mist clung to everything, dense and sweet-smelling, and the returner felt its weight press into his thoughts. He had entered the mistwood, the place where travelers went to lose themselves. Each step along the thick branches echoed strangely. The world felt bent. Distant laughter rode on the breeze, but no figures could be seen. Trees twisted into impossible shapes, some resembling faces, others forming gates that led nowhere. He followed the map's path, but it twisted when he looked away. Soon, he wasn't sure if he was going forward or circling. That's when the visions began. He saw his childhood home, intact, warm, filled with laughter. His parents sat by a fire. A younger version of himself chased a wooden toy through the halls. Then, he saw the well again, but not poisoned. Clear, glittering, surrounded by villagers in festival dress. He heard the voice of the masked woman. You can stay, let go of the burden, be who you were. A hand touched his shoulder. He spun, sword drawn, nothing. But then, a figure emerged from the mist, himself. The doppelganger wore his armor, mirrored his stance, and drew a sword of identical make. Its face was his, its eyes empty. They fought in silence. Steel rang on steel. Every move was matched, every tactic countered. The mist thickened. The returner bled. But he noticed something. The double hesitated every time he feinted with his left. It wasn't him. It was memory. Imperfect. He drove his sword forward, not into the chest, but into the shadow beneath the figure's feet. The illusion screamed. The mist shattered like glass. He awoke on solid bark, alone. The air was clear. Nearby, resting on a stone shaped like an eye, was a charm, the lens of real root, a relic that let one pierce deception. He placed it around his neck. The branch ahead split into 3 paths, but with the lens, only one glowed faintly with the green light of truth. He walked that path deeper into the boughs, and the voices fell silent. Chapter 7. The Winged Clan. The mist was behind him now, and so were the ghosts. With the lens of real root guiding him, the returner descended from the high branches into a valley carved into the tree's upper limbs, an unlikely place of light, wind, and open sky. Here, the canopy broke and beams of sunlight speared through, dancing across the ridges of ancient bark. In the center of this clearing was a settlement like none he'd seen before. Huts of woven silk and feather hung from the upper branches, rope bridges and gliders spanned the canopies. Wind chimes made of bone and crystal swayed in the breeze. Elves moved among them, taller, leaner, adorned with iridescent cloaks and thin wing-like capes that fluttered as they walked. These were the Eolis, the Winged Clan, once thought extinct. As the returner approached, the guards descended in silence. Blades were drawn, but not yet bloodied. "We saw your flame in the mist," said one. "We thought it a trick." He raised the lens, letting its glow shine over his chest and the ember sigil beneath. The guards flinched, but did not strike. A voice called from above. A tall woman with silver eyes and a crown of woven feathers glided down. Her presence was regal, but sharp, like wind just before a storm. "I am Selira, speaker of the Eolis," she said. "Why have you come where none return?" "I seek the evil one," the returner said plainly. "The tree is dying. I intend to cut out the rot." Selira studied him, then signaled the guards to lower their weapons. "Come, you should see what became of those who tried." She led him to a nest-like structure at the center of the glade. Inside, bones. Hundreds. Elf, dwarf, human. Some fresh, some ancient. All burned from the inside, as if consumed by fire not their own. "We've fought him before," she said bitterly. "Each time he returns stronger, he roots deeper. We clip one branch and another withers. But you survived." She turned to him. "Survival is not victory. We've waited for a sign, for fire and root to join." She pointed to the sigil on his chest. "You are that sign. Then fight with me." She hesitated. "There is one more gift we can offer," she said. "Wings." That night, the Eolis performed a rite beneath the starlit canopy. They infused his cloak with featherlight thread, and their shaman whispered old wind into the seams. The cloak shimmered like stormlight, allowing him to glide between the branches. They gave him a dagger made from sky iron and a name once lost to legend, Stormroot. "You carry both flame and wind," Selira said as he departed. "Fly swift, strike true, and when you reach the root, cut deep." Chapter 8. The Labyrinth of Leaves. The wind no longer guided him. With the Eolis cloak trailing behind and the verdant crest glowing faintly at his chest, the returner soared downward, past the canopy, through the dark mid-boughs and into a place where sunlight could not reach. Here the tree changed. The bark turned pale and glassy. The air felt brittle, laced with the sharp scent of metal and sulfur. He drifted downward into a massive crevice where roots tangled like veins beneath skin. Embedded in those roots were pipes, unnatural things, bronze tubes churning with alchemical fluid, bubbling like infected blood. This was the Labyrinth of Leaves, though no true leaf had grown here in centuries. He landed beside an archway carved not by nature but by tools. A plaque above the door read, "Development Branch, access denied." But the door was open. Inside, the walls pulsed with strange light. Machinery ticked and groaned. Dozens of glass tanks lined the corridors, each containing something that once resembled life. Twisted mockeries of elves, beasts, and plants. Failed experiments. Some still twitched. He moved silently, blade ready. The deeper he went, the more disturbing it became. Diagrams of the tree dissected into parts, roots labeled as fuel conduits, limbs as resource channels. Whoever had built this place sought not to worship the tree, but to weaponize it. He reached the central chamber. It was circular, enormous, lined with rotating rings of brass and stone. A single platform stood at its center, and on it was a figure. A man, thin as a shadow, clothed in robes stitched with alchemical symbols. His skin shimmered like tarnished silver. "You are a rare variable," the man said. "The tree's blood runs deep in you." "Who are you?" the returner demanded. "I am the architect of renewal," the figure said. "The tree decays. I evolve it. Its roots are inefficient, its form archaic, but with transmutation and sacrifice we can create perfection. What you create is abomination. Only to those too weak to rise above nature." The floor shifted. Pipes erupted. From them emerged creatures, part bark, part bone, part brass. Their joints hissed, their mouths clicked open with no sound. The returner fought. He ducked a piston-limbed monstrosity, drove his blade through a brass-encased heart, leapt from a collapsing pipe to drive his dagger into the architect's shoulder. But the architect didn't bleed. Instead, he melted, his body unraveling into mercury-like fluid which slithered into the walls and vanished. The lights dimmed. Silence. Only one object remained, a scroll etched in glowing runes. It was a schematic showing the deepest root where the evil one nested. He had found the path, but the tree would not let him take it easily. As he turned, the entire labyrinth began to shake, and the roots howled. Chapter 9. The Root of the Blight. The world trembled. As the labyrinth of leaves crumbled behind him, the returner descended a narrow shaft formed by ancient roots and reinforced with rusted iron. He followed the schematic burned into his memory, the verdant crest at his chest pulsing brighter with each step. The path narrowed. The air thickened. Then the shaft opened into a vast chamber. The root sanctum. It was unlike anything above. The walls were formed not of bark, but bone. Giant roots curled like ribs overhead, coated in black fungus. Great vats of glowing sap fed into pulsating tendrils that snaked across the floor, converging on a central altar of obsidian. There stood a figure in priestly robes, face hidden beneath a gold mask shaped like a weeping tree. The High Root Priest. "You've come far," he said, voice echoing like a funeral bell. "But you are mistaken. This is not rot. This is rebirth." The returner raised his blade. "This is perversion. You betrayed the tree." "We served it," the priest hissed. "The tree was dying, starved, neglected. The evil one gave us knowledge, power. We fed it, and in return it made us strong." He raised his staff. Roots burst from the ground, blackened, bladed, crawling with eyes. From the shadows came creatures once elven, now fused with bark and sinew, their mouths open in endless moans. They wore the robes of druids and healers. The priest's voice thundered. "Behold the Rootborn, our new order." The returner fought. The Rootborn moved like nightmares, jerking, twisted, half aware. He parried one's claws, drove his dagger into another's throat. They bled sap and ash. He ignited the ember's sigil. Flames engulfed the roots, searing them clean. But more kept coming. The priest stood untouched. Then the returner remembered the lens. He tore it from his neck and looked through it, past the altar, past the priest. There, a tether of blight connecting the priest to the altar's core. He leapt, dodging a spiked root, and hurled the lens like a blade. It struck the tether. A shriek like splintering wood split the air. The tether snapped. The priest screamed, dropping to his knees. The mask shattered, revealing a face half dissolved by corruption, unrecognizable. The returner stepped forward and drove his sword into the man's heart. The rootborn collapsed. The roots convulsed, then went still. For the first time in generations, the tree breathed. But deep, deep beneath the altar, a new pulse stirred, and the evil one, its true form, awoke. 10. The evil one's heart. The earth groaned. The altar in the root sanctum cracked open, revealing a spiral descent, lined with glowing veins of sap and blood. The returner stepped through, his cloak singed, his blade dulled, his body battered, but his resolve untouched. Downward he went. No longer bark or roots surrounded him, but something older. Flesh. The tunnel pulsed with breath, its walls glistening like the inside of a lung. The air buzzed with ancient whispers. At the bottom, a door waited, formed of living wood and bone, sealed with runes of grief. It opened for him. He entered the heart root. A chamber vast as the sky unfolded before him. At its center grew the corrupted heart of the world tree, once golden, now black and blistered, thudding in slow, painful beats. And tethered to it like a parasite, coiled and pulsing, was the evil one. It was not a beast. It was a god-wound, formless and immense, with writhing limbs of shadow and eyes that bloomed and vanished like sickness. It turned toward him not with a face, but with awareness, a mind made of sorrow and rage. "You are the returner," it said, its voice a chorus of dying leaves. "I am," he said. "You come to sever me. I do. You will fail. I won't." The evil one screamed. The world trembled. It struck first tendrils of blight lashing from the walls that roots turned to blades, memories turned to weapons. It spoke in the voices of the dead, conjured illusions of those the returner had lost. But he saw through them. The lens had trained him. The crest had rooted him. The ember had burned away the doubt. He danced through the storm of sorrow and shadow, striking at the tethered roots feeding the evil one's body. His blade shattered, but his dagger found sap veins. He climbed the pulsating mass, dodging strikes of black lightning, driving his will into every cut. Finally, he reached the core. The verdant crest glowed. He pressed it into the heart. There was no explosion, no roar, only a stillness, a breath held by the world. Then, green light, the heart convulsed. The evil one shrieked as if it were being borne backward. It collapsed in on itself. When the returner woke, he lay in a bed of moss. The chamber had become a glade. Sunlight poured through the cracks above. The heart pulsed again, not in pain, but in rhythm. The tree lived, and the evil one was gone. Epilogue. The greening of the world. The returner did not leave the tree for many days. He wandered the corridors that had once pulsed with poison, now humming with fresh sap. Roots that had writhed with anger now curled in repose. The faces that once whispered sorrow had gone silent. He found the hermit's tree again, its bark now blooming with white flowers. He walked through Eolis, where moss once choked the gates but now parted to let sunlight in. The fountain flowed again, its water cool and clean. Children played where corpses once lay. A priest knelt at the altar, no longer whispering prayers into darkness. They called him Stormroot now. Some bowed, others simply nodded. Salira arrived days later on a wind glider, her wings catching golden dusk. "You broke it," she said softly. "The cycle." "Only for now," he replied. "Rot always finds its way back. Then we'll plant stronger roots." He looked at the horizon. The tree's canopy stretched like an emerald continent above the world, healing slowly but surely. He knew others would come, curious, greedy, lost. But he also knew the tree remembered now, and it would call protectors again, if needed. He strapped his blade to his back, not to fight, but to carry. The verdant crest had grown warm. He left the village in the early morning, stepping into a dawn that did not bleed. For joining us on this journey beneath the boughs of the world tree. From the ashes of Eolis to the greening of the world, we've walked beside the returner through fire, shadow, and renewal. If you enjoyed this tale of courage, decay, and rebirth, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these stories alive. New adventures await in the realms beyond the roots, where myth and memory intertwine. So now, close your eyes, let the sound of rain and distant thunder wash over you, and drift softly into dreams of growing light.